everybody. So, I'm here to talk to you today about how to build an app, how to ship an app by shipping an app. But before I get into it, I just want to say thank you to the Infinite Red team for this conference. I mean, honestly, if you had told me that you had organized conferences for 10 years, I would believe you. So thank you very much. This has been awesome. Really appreciate it. Okay, so how many people got to check out this app? Do you know what this is? The Photobomb app. Yeah, so it was just a fun little thing to try out. We're going to walk through kind of everything that I had to do to get this ready for this talk, and we're going to try to fit all of it within 30 minutes. So it's a little ambitious. So there are areas I may go a little quickly on. Everything is posted online. Everything is open source. I'll have the slides. Everything will be there. So if you miss anything, don't worry about it. So originally when I started this, speaking of source code, if you read some of it, you'll see that I refer to these little stickers that we put on the application as props. And this was a really stupid idea when working in React because you constantly troll yourself on variable names. And so it was a fun time. So if you need to still download this, so you have a few different options. chainreactphotobomb.com, search for it from the App Store, or thanks to Brent, actually, you can go get it on Expo if that's your thing. So let's take a look, just real quick. I have to absolutely take a picture of everyone here. And so what we will do, so I'm going to have an iOS app over here in the simulator, and I'm going to run my Android phone here so that we can look at both. And let's go back here a bit. Okay, so the resolution on this is not going to be good, but it doesn't matter. So let's take a picture. I'm trying not to rotate as I go. All right, everybody do something fun. Okay, let's see what happens here. A little blurry, but so this is part of the app. So we're going to go through and you can choose any number of stickers. We can pinch to resize them. It was just a fun little way to just sort of try this stuff out. And you'll notice when I do this, it should appear over on the other screen if I'm not too cut off here. So what's interesting about this is this is all real time. And so as people take pictures, if all of you have this out, and it might just be a fun thing to keep it out while we're doing the talk and take some pictures, if you haven't already. And we'll just sort of see what happens. So we'll come back to this. Okay, so moving on. You've got all these great ideas. Here's an app that we want to build. I kind of showed you the finished product a little bit, and hopefully you've had a chance to use it. But as developers, I think we have a very big tendency to just, okay, I have an idea, let's go, let's start coding. Do not do this. If you're prototyping something, it's great. If you're going to throw it away, that's great. But take a little bit of time just to think about what you need to do. So here's what we're going to talk about. And this list may look a little bit daunting, but some things fill in at the same time, so do not worry. And I'll say what some of these are as they go. So if you don't remember all of these, again, totally fine. If you remember one thing, then awesome. So here's the first one. There's a few prerequisites before we do anything. We need App Store accounts. We have to actually be able to ship these things to users. And it's good to do this first, before you do anything. So since we have to do that, what you're going to need to know if you're an individual or if you're a company. So hopefully you can make that decision. If you are a company, you need this thing called a DUNS number. If you're a large company, you probably already have one. There's a search tool to check, or you apply. So once you apply, you'll get a call back from these people to verify you are a legit company, and you're good to go after you give Apple $99 a year. Google is a little bit cheaper, but it's less of a verification process, but there's still this top-level decision. Are you an individual? Are you a company? If you're a company, then make a company account because it's a little bit easier. Google is $25, one-time fee. And then we're done trading money for accounts, so we can move on from there. Just get that out of the way if you don't have them already, so you don't have to worry about it later. Because the last thing you want to do is be ready to ship your app and then wait to do all this stuff. So, okay. By the way, fireworks transitions, we're close enough to the 4th. Instead of just fading in, we're going to do fireworks. Okay, so features. We have real-time photo stream. We add a photo from the camera, from the library. We have optional stickers that we add. You can just do an image without stickers if you want to do that. And we want to save a composited photo of all those things into a real-time stream. And there is a concept of flagging as we open up an image that you'll see. I'll talk about why that's there a little bit later, but if you flag a photo, it's going to also disappear in real time from everyone's devices. So, what could go wrong here? What should we look at? Well, what camera library should we use? How do we resize things? What gestures are going to work? How do we composite images and other images into an image? How do we do real time? Are we going to use GraphQL subscriptions, or are we going to use Firebase? Do you need Redux or MobX? So despite what some of you think, you don't actually need it on every app. I know we just talked about this at the panel. This is actually a really good use case for just a set state app. I have 2 screens, so it works pretty well. 3 screens, actually. So prerequisites are good, and state versus store. We're going to go with state here. So think about the screens in your application, just to have a high-level view of what's going on. So I just showed you the finished product. This is done before that. You'll see I already started trolling myself with ad props. You may see those in a few screenshots. But the idea, I have loading, I have a photo stream, you're going to pick some stuff to the photo, and then you'll save it. So if you're a designer, you probably want to go further than this. You maybe want to have a clickable prototype, something a little bit nicer. We don't have time for that, so we're not going to go there. All right, next up, let's talk briefly about APIs. So APIs, you kind of have a few things that you want to do. Do you have an existing app? And do you need new endpoints to develop what your application is going to have to do? Is it worth adding a GraphQL layer to the existing endpoints? Maybe you're not really sure what you need yet. Maybe you want the client to query for everything. So that's an option. If you go the new API route, you have to choose, do I develop this in-house? Do I use a backend as a service? And you have some of those same decisions, but it's just something that you need to think about because it impacts a lot of things. We're going to go in this app, we're going to use a backend service called graph.cool, and that is going to be it's a GraphQL service that powers everything for our data. So I want to point this out. It's 2017. You should be using HTTPS. By using graph.cool, I get HTTPS for free. And the images are all going to be that way too. So if you don't do this and you use just regular HTTP, you have to deal with the app transport security, which is why localhost works for you in development, and you don't have to deal with certificates and stuff. But you don't want to really get into that. It's really not that much work. Let's Encrypt makes things easy, so do that. So now we have to start our app. Here's a crazy decision tree on what you can do. But the short version of this is really just use Create React Native App unless you know you don't need it, is how I look at this. So there's a lot of things that you can do. In this talk, this can absolutely be done with Expo, which is included in Create React Native App. I definitely could have done that, but I wanted to sort of show the whole just React Native init experience. So after you have an app, if you don't, or this could be slightly before you have the app if you go with Ignite. So choose one of these. You don't want to start from scratch. You're not really sure what you're doing. Maybe you want to go with that. You have to just be careful that if there's a lot of things that are included in these packages, so you just have to kind of pay attention to that if you don't want to get yourself into this constant learning mode of just getting started. So just throw that out there. So next up, we've got an app. Let's MVP our MVP. Let's talk about all the items that we have to do to make this work. And I don't have a lot of code examples, but I want to show you parts of them. So first off, this is a tip that I would highly recommend. Focus on one platform, but always check both. So a lot of people always default to iOS, especially with layout. Android tends to be one that you run into some weirdness. So it's actually pretty valuable to focus on Android and then check on iOS. I know it's not as exciting, but if it works on Android, I'm almost positive it's going to work on iOS. I have an Android phone, so that's part of why I do that, I guess. But whatever you do, make sure that you check it everywhere all the time. So we do this with pull request templates to where we rely on the developer to just say, hey, I checked it here, I checked it here. So that works for us. So next up, we have this really great branding from the conference here that I stole, which is fine because the app promotes the conference, so stealing is okay. So if your images are here and you're noticing that things get really slow, this is probably what's going on. So this image started out as 1440 by 640. And if you add to that the fact that you have to produce a 2x asset and a 3x asset for the high density screens. You're talking about really big files, and this is not great. Your phone is not that many pixels, so reduce that. This will really, really make your app suck, so just want to hammer that home. We optimized our image size, good to go there. So next up, we need to get an image from the camera or the library. So there's a lot of different ways to go. I actually started, if you do look in the source code, I actually started with React Native Camera, started implementing everything myself, and then realized that one of my requirements was to also select it from the library. Well, it turns out there's a really great library that does both of those things, and so that's what I went with, because that's exactly what I needed it to do. Now, when you do this, do not forget to add permissions. If you do, your app will either crash or it will get rejected. So just think about, like most library authors are actually really, really good about if something requires permissions, they put it in the README. So just don't glaze over that aspect. It's kind of an important piece. I have to next upload the file after you take a picture. So we get back a URI from that library of the image, points directly to it, we can display it, but we need to upload that to graph.cool in this case. So we have an upload button, and I put this on here because I ran into something that really took me a lot of time. On Android, if I did not have a boundary in my content type, the image came up blank. And it doesn't matter what the boundary is, it can be anything under the sun. But that was an interesting discovery, so just wanted to point that out. Now, talking about the photo stream, here's kind of what that's built on. It's built with GraphQL. We're doing a query, and we're doing a real-time subscription. And there's also Flatlist, which is powering the list of photos that are there. So we're going to be fetching the data once, and if you're on the screen, anything new comes over a WebSocket. And here's kind of what that looks like, just to give you an initial idea. We have a all photos query that we're filtering out the flagged items, and we're ordering by the created date, descending. The subscription, we care about when they're created, and we also care about when they're updated, because when you flag a photo, that's an update mutation, and we care about that. And so that will trigger the subscription, and we can act accordingly. I don't have time to go into anything more than that, but I just wanted to point it out. So next up, we need to create a composite view. What I mean by composite view is this. So we're starting, you'll see props again. So you're starting with a photo. We're adding a whole bunch of stuff. You can actually add a lot. I couldn't get it to crash just by kept trying to hit as many as I possibly could, and it seemed to do okay. But once you have all that in there, all these images in there, we need to save that result to a photo. So the first thing we need to think about there is background images. And so I want to point this out because typically, especially if you're from a web background, this is not the way that you typically think of using a background image. But image is a superset of view in React Native, and so you're able to nest it in the same way. And so this is how you want to actually do that. And in the app, this is what it looks like. And it should say render stickers, sticker images. So that will composite everything together. My render sticker images function will go in and actually handle the drawing, but it's just nested. I just wanted to point that out. There's another great library called React Native ViewShot that's only job is to take a view and make an image. So this works really well for what we need. So it did not work with just the image as the root, but as soon as I wrapped that image in a view, things were good. That's all I had to do. Now, one thing to note here is the image is actually cropped a little bit. So it's not going to be the full resolution, full height image that you have, but that's okay. Next up, let's look at pinch to zoom. So what happens with pinch to zoom is we have this nice gesture that scales up and down and moves around. I also added the animations that just kind of make it feel a little bit better so things just don't come on the screen and of that nature. So give the user feedback. Very important. So what I ended up doing was not the built-in pan responder, and it was not, there are a lot of gallery type things out there that handle these kind of pinch type items, but it's for photo galleries. And so this was a way that, I know Kyle and Thomas talked about gestures yesterday, and there's a really great library coming out for it. This is the one I went with though, and I'll show you why, because I really liked this right here. I really like the fact that I have a normal, like you can just ignore all the pan responder stuff up front. The important thing is the on responder move function. And it's really just letting me know, hey, that was a pinch, and it gives you a nice delta of previous pinch and current pinch to handle the scaling quite easily. So that was a good way to go. I sort of compiled all this into transformable image inside the app and made each one of those prop images a transformable image that will handle the animation when it comes in, when you stop moving it, and when you scale. So we have an app. I just want to take a few seconds to take a look and see what everyone's been adding. So let's do that. Awesome. I always love these. They're fun. So there's a lot of fun with this. Okay. So next up. We're not really persisting anything. So there's a glaring item in here that I just didn't really have time to do much with. You might notice that photos are cached somewhat, but not if you kill the app and reopen it, you're going to download probably more than you need to. We're not really persisting much. We don't have any state persistence. So I do want to point out, though, that you should probably persist minimal data. You probably shouldn't persist your entire store when you're putting it into async storage. You really just want to think about enough to relog in and kind of what you want your experience to be when you're offline and how you can handle that. All right. App icons. So up until now, everything looks like this, which sucks, especially if you've tried out a lot of projects and you have 30 of these on your home screen. It's hard to know what they are. Another fun thing is Chain React Photobomb is kind of a long name, so we'll address that in a minute. So if you're the type that really just is very, very particular about how these all look, Sketch has some really great manual templates for this. So if that's what you do, that's awesome. I don't really have time for that, so here's what I'm going with. There's a pretty cool tool that's called RN Generator Toolbox that will basically take an icon file, and you can pass optionally Android or iOS, or you can do them the same way. And it will just generate everything for you. So sometimes this is done as part of a Fastlane process. I typically don't do that just because I don't want them modified every single time. This is something that doesn't really need to be regenerated all the time. So I like this approach. It's a little bit more manual, but it's fine. So one thing on Android to note is that transparency is a thing. So rounded things are nice. If you have some kind of special branding where it would look cool to be transparent, you should use it because most users are not going to expect the square image that you would get. Like typically for iOS, we're going to have kind of a square image and the OS rounds the corners for us. All right, app icon. So splash screen, let's talk about that. You're probably tired of seeing this now. So this is here and it's great, but if you're trying to show a client how far you've gotten in your app, this is not awesome. So there are a couple different ways to do this. To start with, I just want to talk about doing sort of a more manual splash screen just to look at it. So this tool also has a way to generate splash screens from an image. Basically, the concept is you just give it a massive square image and it handles the landscape and the portrait version of it for you. They don't really support, on Android it's only a plain background color, but in this case that's what we're going to do in this setup. If you need something a little more complicated, this is a great add-on to do so for your splash screen. Basically, it's going to be a native piece that you hide from JavaScript when you're ready to go. But we'll talk a little bit more about what we had to do with that, but I just wanted to point out the initial manual thing. So if you go the manual approach, here's what you'll probably encounter directly after that. You'll get this lovely flash of white that happens where you say, oh, my native screen has this nice look. It flashes white for a second, and then my app comes in. And especially if you have a dark background color in your application, you'll definitely run into this. So what does this mean? This means that your native side is done, React is not finished yet, so your background view color is not going to be there. So if you want to fix this, on iOS what you will need to do, and this is probably hard to see, but basically there's root view.background color. And it takes a UI color. It's not a hex color, it's not RGB, but there's a great site that converts them because I don't really speak UI color. So this was good. On Android, what we need to do is create a referenced color, which is this thing at the top where we're basically just defining it. And then down below, we have the window background, and where they're setting it there. So this doesn't work to just put the hex value down there. It does have to be a referenced value. And so once you do that, then it should look a lot better. And the idea, if you go that approach, is basically you're going to have a plain colored background, and then your nice loader is going to be in React Native when that kicks in. And that experience usually looks pretty good. But again, if you want something else, then that splash screen is a good one to go with. So next up, let's talk about device orientation. So I did not really do anything for landscape, and I feel like this is a very common thing for people. Maybe it depends on your application, but it's kind of easy to forget. The good news is it's kind of easy to limit, and it's also easy to add back in when you support it. So what I do here is just change the screen orientation for portrait in Android, and in Xcode, I just like doing it in the UI there, that we're just going to lock it down to portrait for now. Okay. Now, here's the piece I did not handle well in this application, handle offline. There is a branch that I started and just did not have time to do it. So here's kind of my bare minimum offline case that I like to do. Basically, when it's offline, your Wi-Fi goes out, you get a little banner. When your Wi-Fi comes back, the banner goes away. And that's at least telling the user, hey, we didn't really have, we don't have a full offline experience just yet, so your things might not work. Because that can get a little bit complex to go through. But at least that way they know, and you're not having the case of, I'm clicking on all this stuff and nothing is happening, what's going on? All right, handled offline. So what about the name and the package name that I mentioned earlier? If you need to rename an app, you just need to basically search for it. Info plist here in Android manifest is going to be, or actually strings XMLs are referenced in Android manifest. But basically, this is what's going to show on the home screen, on the launcher screen. So if you need to change it, which I did because mine was way too long, that's where you'll go. If you need to rename the package, it's a find and replace operation to follow kind of the standard com.companyname.appname. So we did that. Here's another area I did not do. This is like probably the third time of pretending to test. So here's pretending to test. I actually do like just snapshots as long as you're very careful on their size and you're actually looking at them in a GitHub diff. If you're not, I think they're completely useless. But as long as those two things are true, then I think they're a really good way, especially to get a nice basic safety net around your app. One thing I'm really interested in that, to be honest, I haven't actually tried yet is this library. It's not quite ready for Android yet as far as I know, but it's a really nice way to do kind of the gray box end-to-end testing that feels a little bit more like natural, a little bit more built into the JavaScript kind of world. So I like this a lot, so I'm keeping my eye on that project. Okay, next up we have some optional things. And I put optional in quotes because they're really, really helpful. Here's some of those. Add CI. This shouldn't really be optional, but you don't have to do it to ship an app. It's just nice. It really helps you. It's very good. So this is great because your developers aren't all compiling everything on their machines. You're having one central place where this happens that handles everything. There are a few different options. There are more than this. I've been recently using Buddy Build and really liking it. Mobile Center is also awesome. By the way, if you want to use Mobile Center, refer to everything that Ram said earlier. Okay, we have CI. Code push. If you want to use Mobile Center, refer to everything Ram said earlier. If you're not on Mobile Center, it's manual. You can do it manually as well. So I would just highly, highly recommend you add it because there's always going to be a just in case where you're going to need a hotfix to production, and it's there when you need it. So that will happen, so it's just nice to have that safety net. Unless you have very good reasons for not including it, I would recommend having it in. So we used Code Push to add stickers on Saturday. Had the app out in the store. I really wanted something great. The Infinite Red team helped me out designing these, and they're really awesome. They reflect the conference really well. But we needed to get things out quickly and not wait on Apple, so that was super helpful. So what do users see when you use Code Push? So if you downloaded the app brand new, you might have seen that it loaded and then immediately restarted. The reason that is because I decided that it was a mandatory update. I did not want to tell all of you to download the app and then immediately restart the app in order to get the new stickers. And I felt that just that experience trade-off was kind of worth it in this case. More often than not, you want the non-mandatory option that will basically download for you and apply the update when it's restarted by the user or the OS. So one thing about Code Push to think about is that since you're keeping your source code in source control, when you go to release a new version of your app, you're going to include the feature that you hot pushed. And so you're not going to have that again. So let's say that I had something improved tomorrow, anyone else that downloaded the app would not have that restart experience. So that's really helpful. So enough on that. Crash reporting and analytics are good. You get some basic stuff. It's not great. It's not really real time, but it's kind of there from all the app stores. You get crash data when you use Buddy Build. If you want analytics, there's some options. If you want, if you use Mobile Center, refer to everything that Ram just said. All right, we're getting there. Deploy to beta. So first off, certificates are really fun. They're the best thing about what we do here. This is my preferred path currently. Fastlane Match is a really great way, if you've looked at codesigning.guide, to centrally store these certificates and profiles for your development team and not have to have every developer regenerate their own and go through that mess. I wish there was this similar thing for Android, but there's not, but really we just have the key store that we have to deal with. So the docs are actually really good on React Native for this. And don't read too much into saying into actually there, by the way. So follow these. This is actually really good. This is exactly what you have to do. This is exactly how you have to configure it. And you're good to go. So in beta testing, you have the option of beta testing using the CI service. So Buddy Build has their own. Mobile Center has their own. This is completely independent of Fastlane or the Google Play Store. And there's some nice experiences. There's some different things that they can do that they've decided to do that are really helpful. So you might notice a theme here. Okay. So another option is, let's say you don't want to do the beta testing there. You want to keep beta testing with TestFlight, keep beta testing in Google Play. You can have the CI just build everything for you and upload the binaries so that when you bring your code into your master branch, all that happens, it's ready to go, and then you take it the rest of the way. That's an option. You can use Fastlane to automate this process, also an option. Similar idea, it's just that your Fastlane scripts are instead of CI. You could do this manually, but I don't really recommend it because it's a lot more error prone. There's a lot that could go on there. Okay, home stretch. Final checks. So what I would think about here, go over, especially if this is the first time you've submitted an application, read over some of this stuff. So this is live updated, or mostly live updated. No, I guess it's not really that live updated, but it's pretty current. So they try to just keep up with trends and say like, hey, here's what we're rejecting people with. If you have any of these things, it might apply to you. And I don't think you have to read this entire document. I think that you just need to kind of glaze over it and see if anything jumps out at you. See if there's anything you're like, oh yeah, we're doing this in our app and that might be bad, so maybe I should address that. We need to generate some assets. So when people view this application on the store, you need assets for them. I do this manually. It's also in that generator project that I mentioned earlier. We also want to test on actual devices. So the Amazon device farm was mentioned before. That's good because it's not a simulator. They're actual physical devices, just virtual. Or just get a hold of as many phones as you can and just try things out. Now, this part, basically, we just have to create the release in Apple. We have to go through and add a bunch of metadata. So we have to talk about the app, give it a copyright, give it some URLs, do a whole bunch of fun stuff. Some of this can be automated by Fastlane. Some people just like to go in and fill it out. But the important thing is that down here, you're going to pick a build. And so this is going to be the build that's uploaded by your CI, and we'll choose it there. And on Google, it's somewhat of a similar process. You can also just automate the whole thing as well. But basically, we want to set up a release or set up a beta channel. We want to get things deployed there. Now, even if you don't use Fastlane, right before you go to release your app, I would highly recommend using this tool as just a way to spot check dumb things. I had two dumb things. One being that I forgot the copyright date, so that was bad. The second being I used chainreactphotobomb.com before I had changed the DNS for that. And that caught this. That would have immediately rejected me. So this is just a nice little sanity check of like, oh, yeah, I didn't do anything dumb. So we get 3 checked off there, which fills our list. Okay, so now that's all of the kind of work out of the way. Now we just need to submit the app. So we push a button and we wait. With Google, we're going to wait an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3. It's pretty fast. Apple, it's over the map. They approve most 50% of applications within, or review, sorry, not approve. Review applications 50% within 24 hours, and supposedly 90% within 48 hours. So at least you'll know something in that amount of time. But you're going to have to learn how to handle rejection. This happens always. Here's what I hit, unless you're just really lucky. So I hit a Google rejection first because I submitted to Google first. I knew it would be an easier process. I wanted to make sure things were there first. And what they told me here is that you're actually wanting to read the phone state, but you don't have a privacy policy set, and that's bad. So you have to do that. So what I did is I added privacy policy. Pretty sure Apple would have also rejected me for this, so this is good. Now, Apple's rejection started off by saying, hey, how did these photos get here? This seems weird. Because it was all of our placeholder testing photos and just a bunch of weird stuff and like the default simulator screens and all of that. So I said, hey, photos are populated by users of the app and talked about the conference. By the way, we've got plenty of time. It's July 3rd. Conference, plenty of time to do this. Okay, so next up, rejected again. And what happened here is that they said, oh, now that we see your app, it's user-generated content. There's a lot more you have to deal with now. You have to have an end-user license agreement. You have to have users agree to that. You have to have a way to take away offensive material by someone. And these are all really good things that you probably should just do anyway, but I did not think of this. This is a very good point. So, we still have plenty of time. It's July 5th. So here's how I got around that. So we added the end-user license agreement that you just click to agree. There's actually no user accounts, so it's just persisting to async storage. But if it was a user account, I would probably persist it there because if the user uninstalled the app and reinstalled it, they'd see it again. And then we added the flag as inappropriate. So again, if anyone does that, it just removes immediately. It's moderated. We set up a real-time thing to actually say, hey, this photo was flagged just so that we can check it out, see what was going on. That pipes directly into Slack, which is kind of a fun little side project. The good news is all of you have been really awesome with that. There have been no pictures that, as far as I can tell, everyone just wanted to try it out, see what it did. Everyone's been really, really respectful, which I highly appreciate because who knows what would happen with a feature like this. So that's really good to see. Okay, so we fixed all this stuff. We should be good to go. Let's resubmit. So the important thing with resubmission is do not create a new version of your application. They reviewed that version. They just want a new build with the things that you need to adjust. That's important. So that's all really we need to do. And so what happens then, you might get a letter that says, hey, welcome to the App Store. You're good to go. And Google has a little notification that says, hey, your update's live. You're done. And again, so you just need to allocate some time here. The time is sort of unknown. It completely depends on your app. It completely depends how many times you keep getting rejected, but just persist with it. You can do it. And so I'm a managing partner at Echobind. We bet really big on React Native for our apps this year, and I've been loving every minute of it. It's been great. I love you guys as a community. You've probably seen us blowing up the Twitter feed with photos, courtesy of that guy over there. But yeah, so it's just been really fun. So what we're going to do with this is just kind of, I want everyone to keep taking photos, keep kind of enjoying your dinner tonight and your trip home and all of that. We're going to take all of this and lock the stream down after 2 days. And so there are not going to be any, we assume that most people have kind of gone back home at that point. We're not going to allow any more updates and then just kind of do like a fun collage compilation of everything. So it'd just be cool if we could keep adding to it. And it was just like a really, really fun way to talk about an app by shipping an app. I really enjoyed doing it, and thank you very much for having me.